Joining us on the line now is Eli Lake from the Daily Beast, national security reporter. How are you, Eli?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
It's always good to have you here. Look, I want to start out by this story that developed over the weekend that had to do with the Afghan CIA station chief. Apparently, inadvertently, we are told it was a mistake. It slipped through the cracks. But this guy's his cover was blown. He was put on a list of attendees when the president made a surprise visit to Afghanistan. There was a briefing for the president. He was in attendance. It got on a list. It got shipped to all reporters. So this guy's cover has effectively been blown. How does something like that happen?
At this point, I don't know. I mean, I have to assume this would be inadvertent. I mean, it's one of these kinds of things where, I mean, if this was somehow deliberate, it would be such a risky political maneuver. One remembers the Valerie Plame incident where, I mean, that was something that really got the Bush administration announced for almost its entire second term, ultimately leading to Scooter Libby having to step down as Vice President Cheney's chief of staff and national security advisor. So it is such a serious thing if they did it deliberately. I really cannot imagine that the White House
I don't think it was
so reckless.
I don't think it was deliberate, but aren't there supposed to be checks and balances on things like that? Somebody noticed that you're about to out the Afghan CIA station chief?
Well, it's also one of these things where oftentimes the station chief is, you know, certainly he's undercover, but that is a kind of semi-official job, especially in a place like Afghanistan. I'm not saying it's not a serious breach, but most Afghan officials probably knew who this guy was, particularly in the national security space, given the fact that, you know, the Karzai government has been what it is. The chances that this guy's identity was hidden, at least, you know, to certain elements of the enemy, are probably slim. I'm not excusing it. I'm not saying that it should have been done, but in a job like that, it's not quite the same as being kind of an agent, you know, kind of under deep cover inside a foreign government or something like that.
Eli, just keeping in Afghanistan here, you wrote about the troop drawdown in Afghanistan and how that's going to be worked on. The president, by the way, when he was in Afghanistan over the weekend to visit the troops, he made note of the fact that eventually they are going to be drawing down the troops. In fact, hang on a second, I can play you the audio and you'll hear it. Hang on, here it is.
Al-Qaeda is on its heels in this part of the world, and that's because of you.
Oh, excuse me, it's this cut right here talking about the drawdown.
You know, I know it's a little late, but I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd stop by. So I'm here to say thank you. And I'm here to say how proud I am of you. For many of you, this will be your last tour in Afghanistan. And by the end of this year, the transition will be complete, and Afghans will take full responsibility for their security, and our combat mission will be over. America's war in Afghanistan will come to a responsible end.
But Eli Lake at the Daily Beast, you're reporting that how many troops are left in Afghanistan is still up for debate, and whether they are doing this in a very responsible way.
Well, the president hasn't signaled what presence will be left after 2014. There is a major, I mean, everybody in the back of their mind is thinking, because the military believed that there would be some presence in Iraq after 2011. And the fact of the matter is that those negotiations stalled out. There were a lot of problems with the status of U.S. military contractors. Eventually, there was a kind of de facto zero option in Iraq. And look what happened in Iraq. You know, Al-Qaeda was defeated in the west of that country, and now they control Fallujah, and they're expanding into Syria. And it's a total mess, as everyone would say. And many in the military would like to add more counterterrorism support, and that's kind of in the pipeline right now for Iraq. The concern is, will this happen in Afghanistan? You know, President Obama said Al-Qaeda is largely defeated in this part of the world, and it's true. Osama bin Laden's dead, and a lot of senior Al-Qaeda leaders have been killed in Pakistan, and that's a great victory for U.S. armed forces and the CIA. At the same time, a lot of people are telling us that, you know, that there are still Al-Qaeda networks throughout Afghanistan, and if the United States leaves precipitously, or there is a very small footprint, the Afghan security services will not be in a position to keep them at bay, and that will only be a matter of time before they reestablish a safe haven in the place from which they launched the 9/11 attack.
Well, it'll be certainly something to watch in the days ahead and wonder exactly how they're going to work that out with the troops leaving. Look, Ukraine. We have a new president-elect in Ukraine. He's a billionaire chocolatier by the name of Petro Poroshenko. What do we know about him? What's likely to happen now?
I think what we know about him is that in some ways he represents a more moderate choice, but he's been very clear that he is not going to accept the status quo, that Russia basically has annexed Crimea. But I also think that given the fact that he's defeated Yulia Tymoshenko, who was a far more kind of nationalist candidate, it could in some ways be seen as an olive branch, so that you will at least, kind of put pressure. The ball is now in Russia's court. I mean, it was always a bit of a fabrication to say that there was a danger to the Russian minority in Ukraine, and that is the pretext that Vladimir Putin would like to use to justify his interventions, stealth and otherwise. But I think that this actually is evidence that the Ukrainian people very much are interested in kind of protecting and keeping their country whole and free, as it were, to use the famous phrase that sort of emerged after the fall of the Soviet Union. But the Ukrainian people have also rejected a more nationalist candidate. Remember, Tymoshenko was the one who was recorded in that conversation, mysteriously made public by the RT, the Russian state propaganda.
I've forgotten
service.
about that, yeah.
Yeah, where she was saying, it's time to maybe take up arms against these Russians and teach them a lesson and so forth. And so in that sense, the more moderate candidate is one.
Eli Lake, what are you hearing in Nigeria? We understand that the government officials have said that have identified the location of where the girls are that have been taken by that terrorist group, but there's no way to get them out. We do have up to 30 special forces on the ground there, U.S. special forces. What's going to happen?
I can't tell you at this point what's going to happen. I do know that this is one of these situations where I think the U.S. Special Operations community and U.S. Special Operations Forces certainly have the capabilities. We'll see if they're sort of set up at this point. But there's always been a problem in that, this is also a civil war in Nigeria. And, there has been this concern that if you empower the Nigerian military too much, they will see those signals as an opportunity to conduct abuses in their hunt for these girls. So it's important to find them, obviously, and hopefully the U.S. Special Op. But I don't think it's a matter necessarily only of capabilities. Some of this is like, are you going to use this as a pretext to further kind of commit potential atrocities in the name of finding the girls, which is a real concern as well.
Eli Lake, Senior National Security Correspondent for the Daily Beast, thank you so much.